Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you a review and demonstration of another filter system, and this is from Haida. This is the M10-II filter system. Now, a lot of these filter systems bear some similarities, but I continue to see an evolution in features to where they're just becoming more and more intuitive. The earliest kind of square filter systems that I used, they tended to have a lot of little knobs, things that could be lost and needed replacing along the way. And so what I've seen is just an increasing user friendliness and also just kind of intelligence of design. And I certainly see a further progression with this filter system. Now, first of all, let's talk about what this filter system is not. This is not something that's designed to provide a filter solution for lenses where you can't use traditional screw-on filters. The basis of how the system works is that it does attach onto the filter threads of your lens, which means that you could just use traditional circular filters. And in some cases, that is going to be the better choice. But the reason why you might consider going with a filter system like this instead, there are several reasons. First of all, if you want to stack filters, maybe you want to do a long exposure, you also want to use a polarizer or something to that effect. It means that you're able to stack filters without having to worry about introducing a mechanical vignette, because these systems, rather than mounting right onto that thread and the filters being right there and adding thickness to the front where it could increase vignette, as you can see the design, it flares out in front of the lens itself, and so as a byproduct it's going to be wider, the opening is going to be wider than what your lens is. This is designed to be used up to 82mm filter thread lenses, and so it's always going to be wide enough where there's no mechanical vignetting, even if you're using a circular polarizer or some other drop-in filter. More on that in a moment. And you're stacking two square filters like either the 100mm filters like this, or you can also use the 100mm by 150mm filters like the graduated filters that are going to look something more like this. So in this case, I've got three filters here. I could use all three of them and never have to worry about introducing any kind of vignette. That's obviously going to be an advantage, particularly if you're shooting with a wide-angle lens. But also, as I noted, you have further advantages. One of the big ones being that you can use a graduated filter to help to balance maybe a sky with the background or the foreground, or in some situations you want to do the opposite, and this allows you to use that in either position, but to kind of move it down into the appropriate position where the graduated darkening portion is at the right part of the image. Obviously, you don't have the option of doing that with a circular filter, so another advantage, and of course the ability to then stack those filters in this, is something that is advantageous. So a few clever aspects of design. First of all, this is designed around, as I said, something that threads onto your front lens element. I recommend, unless you're going to use it only on one lens, I recommend that you buy the largest adapter size and then you use step-up rings to get to that. So for example, I went with the 82mm size, but what that allows me to do is that in this case, I've got it attached to a lens with a 77mm front filter thread, but all I've done is just use a very inexpensive step-up ring. You can usually get them for $2 or $3, and so I'm going from 77mm up to 82mm, but I could go on down to increasingly smaller diameter lenses, and I could use all of them with this system. So it just screws on like that. And then one of those clever elements of design here is the simplicity in which you can actually mount the adapter here. You simply slide into the slot. There's a little lever here on the right hand that you depress and allows you to go into place, and so now it is locked on there. You can freely rotate at this point, but if you get to a position where you want it to hold, there's also a locking knob on the left side that allows you to lock it into that place where now it's not going to move. And you can also use that with varying degrees of tension. If you want it to have some tension but not completely locked, you can control it doing that. And so that means that it is very easy to take this filter system on and off, which is obviously handy. Now, most of these systems allow you to use circular filters as well. That's kind of one of those things that was a progression along the way. But this is the first I've seen that allows you to do a drop-in situation to where all you got to do is to depress these two kind of buttons on the side. It allows you to slide that into place where it now locks. And then right up on top, you have a lever that allows you to rotate that if you've got something like a circular polarizing filter. And so then on top of that, if you want to continue to stack filters, again, not having to use knobs, it's internally tensioned. You can slide this into place. And I can tell you that it is secure enough, even when you're using the larger graduated filter like I could do here. that it slides in there and it keeps enough tension with it that I have actually hiked with this several kilometers with it on a tripod, kind of slung over my shoulder. It was just kind of a, a grab and go situation, and it went stably. This filter did not move. It kept it locked into place. And so as far as the mechanics of how this operates, I like the cleverness of design here. And of course, depending on what level of package you buy, you can buy it with coming with a case to carry everything, and all of their filters come nicely packaged in these metallic kind of like steel cases, almost like you used to get DVDs when they were in the kind of the upper level case, something much like that. So let's break down how the optical performance is, and we're going to dive in and take a look at a few photos together. So we're going to take a look at these components one by one here, starting with the circular polarizer. So here's a scene that I shot without using the polarizer. And so quick look at the detail. This is on the Alpha 1 with the 35 to 150 millimeter from Tamron. So obviously you can see it's a really sharp, excellent lens, great detail, image looks good. However, if I introduce the polarizer, you can see first of all here, if my priority is just improving the colors, you can see that I've retained that detail, but there is a richer saturation level to the colors. Now, another application of the polarizer is if I'm rotating it, which is easy to do with this configuration, to where I'm deepening the sky effect here. And so a little bit more polarization effect in the sky, and so allows me to get a really rich looking image. And of course, if we zoom into a pixel level, you can see once again that detail is just fantastic. And so it's certainly giving you good clarity. The other advantage of a polarizer is just intensifying colors in general. And so here you can see with a little bit more of a telephoto type shot that using that polarizer has allowed me to get really nicely saturated deep color here, which is can be an advantage just in and of itself. So what if we introduce another component? In this case, we're going to add on an ND filter. And so first of all, here is the look of this particular scene with no filter attached. Then if we add on the circular polarizer, you can see that in this case, there's not a huge amount of difference. We'll toggle back and forth, just a little bit more of color that has been introduced. But if I introduce the ND filter, it allows me to really create a different kind of image. And so, as far as negatives, when you do a long exposure, obviously you get some movement in the here amongst the trees, which is not always a desirable effect. But when it comes to the fountain, we can see if we kind of toggle back and forth, the fountain here just looks kind of, sloppy, lacking any kind of symmetry. But in this case, we've got a really cool look effect here. And then also we get an intensification of the reflections on the water. We can see if we zoom in here that we have retained nice detail even at a pixel level, particularly in the elements, of course, that don't move at all. Now this can really be the difference between a rather boring image, like the image without the long exposure on the left, and the image on the right, which has a really kind of a unique, more artistic value to it. And so I think almost everyone would instinctively prefer this image on the right to the image on the left. Another case in point here where, just the churning waters, it just makes for, I think, in my eye, just kind of a busy image here on the right with the long exposure. You can see that you're getting a cool looking effect around the kind of static rocks that are in the center of the frame. I zoomed in a bit further and I really liked the impact that I got on this shot, which I thought really worked as a black and white here, to where you've got the, the static, again, the static rocks, but then the kind of action of the water all around it. And in this case, even the movement in the trees creates kind of a mood that I think works here. Another case in point of just how much of a difference this can make. And here's the difference between, all those waters just kind of churning by, again, the static image of the rocks, and then here where we slow things down, and you can see what a cool effect we get with kind of that misty look around them, which really allows the rocks to stand out. If you look here and here, this stands out so much more, and with such a unique quality that is lacking in the image without the long exposure. Here's a couple of solitary images that I just like once again. Again, just combining the long exposure effect with something that's not going to move creates something very interesting. Here again, just a kind of a detail shot, a little bit more abstract of the water rushing in over the rocks there, and just the play of light and shadow that is unique to a long exposure image. So finally, let's take a look at using an ND Grad filter. And so in this image here on the left, we've got unfiltered here. Then on the right, I have introduced just a little bit of a graduated filter on the top to just start to darken the sky a little bit, but then also it allows the nature of the exposure to change, and by rotating the polarizing filter, I've taken some of the reflection off here to allow a little bit more contrast between the water and the long grasses that are blowing in the wind. Now we can take that a step further, sliding that grad filter on down a bit. Now in this case, the sky it was kind of a hazy, hot, humid day, so the sky is really not all that impressive at this particular angle, but you can see that it has allowed me to add some interest to the sky itself, and then also to get richer colors in the grasses just due to the nature of the exposure. By moving, though, to a different angle on the scene where there's less of the sun, less of the haze there, you can see that I've been able to really pull in a lot of detail into the sky, and so the sky looks very rich and blue, allows the clouds to pop. But also because it is pulling down the brightness of the scene in general, it allows the foreground to have more light in the frame, which produces a more dynamic look than here, for example. And so toggling back and forth, you can just see the difference there to where I'm getting a richer, more intense look in the image by just using that graduated ND filter. One final example, this scene was actually very bright and glary, and so there just wasn't a lot of detail that was there. But again, by using that graduated ND filter along with the circular polarizer, that's part of it, you can see that my detail is excellent here, no problem with that. But I've been able to balance all the basic elements that are here. So there's a bright layer here, a bright layer in the sky, darker layer here. But by using that ND filter and then the polarizer, I'm able to get a balanced final look that is a worthy image, whereas the scene just without any of these filters would not have been. So certainly a lot of applications for a filter system like this. So as you can see, everything here is fully functional, and frankly, I would be surprised at this point if I saw filters that didn't have good clarity or good optical coatings on them, or if they give you a pronounced color cast. We seem to have moved beyond that, for which I'm very thankful. And so it doesn't necessarily set this apart, but I am thankful that it does keep a good neutral overall color balance, and without any kind of weird kind of tinting that comes into the image due to using the filters. So let's talk price. You can get the basic setup there for just a little over $100. If you're going to add in a system where you've got the drop-in filter, circular polarizing filter, you're going to get into more of the $200 range. If you want something that's equivalent to what I've got set up here, it's going to be somewhere between $400 and $500, depending on what kind of filters that you choose for your own purposes. I kind of have a workflow that I tend to stick with, where I like having somewhere around an ND-1000 filter, which is 10 stops, allows you to get the long exposures that I've demonstrated. I also like having a Grad filter for the simple reason that it gives you more control over the lighting in a particular scene. But these days, I will also say this, you tend to be able to get away with fewer filters because a lot of camera sensors have better dynamic range, and so maybe you can recover a little bit more of a sky than what you used to, even without using a filter. So you may be able to save money in that attribute, but particularly if you're going with just the 100mm by 100mm type filters, I found that I can stack all of that inside this case and travel very small and light with it. So at the end of the day, that's another thing that I value as well. So I don't really have any significant complaint here after spending some time with the Haida M10-II. It seems again like there's some clever evolution of design, and while it's not radically different from what the M10 was, there are a few new features there that I really do like. One of those main ones being the drop-in nature here, but also this lever here that gives you an easy quick release type setup, which means that I can set up, get my shot, I can break it down and maybe pack this away in a backpack or something where I'm not having to worry about a lot of size and weight that I'm carrying along with it. And so it's a system that works and a system that, is competitively priced with other similar systems out there. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you look in the description down below, you can find a linkage there to, if you want to do a little bit more research or to purchase one of these. There are buying links that are there. Beyond that, there's a linkage to follow myself or Craig on social media. Check out our new channel at the Light In TV. You can also buy channel merchandise through links down below, become a patron, and of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and let the light in.